it took off and dried out so I could see what it was like. So let's put that in there so it doesn't blow away. Alright. So I'm like a day behind in my shows because Memorial Day and taking forever to upload those Dungeons and Dragons videos, which I got nice compliments on. Thank you very much. We love doing this. We are huge Dungeons and Dragons fans. We're nuts, actually. It was so bad when we were in high school. I'll tell you a story. My dad's from Indiana, okay? I'm a Lutheran from Indiana. The way they handle kids that are staying up playing Dungeons and Dragons too late at night is that they get up in their BBD underwear with their t-shirt tucked into the underwear and walk into the kitchen and open the refrigerator door to look for a snack at about 11:30 at night. And with all of my friends from high school going, oh my God, my dad's sack in the BBDs just prancing around in front of them, all hairy legs. This was his subtle way of saying, you're here too late now. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah guys, I think it's time to wrap this up. My honeybee, because look at the beautiful honeycomb, and then the beautiful fumed inside starts to show up. The more you smoke it, the more magical it becomes in there. Another one of these Chinese made pipes, but I love the honeycomb we did on it. That was badass. Actually, I'm not going to show you a video because it's CNN. CNN will be a pain in the ass, crybaby motherfuckers about it. So I'm going to tell you to go look for it. Look for Michaela Pereira's show, Michaela, on CNN. And she did something called, I think it was called Pot Revolution. But she's basically talking about Prop 64 in California, what's happening with it. And it's interesting because not too long ago, Michaela was out here in California on KTLA, right? And now she got a job in New York on the morning show there, and everybody on KTLA was very proud of her, and I love Michaela, don't get me wrong, I adore her. But she's kind of conservative, so when she left the state, everybody was still, oh, this marijuana thing is ridiculous. I mean, KTLA itself is still very conservative about the marijuana legalization issue. They still kind of run stories like cops do, you know, like the old cop show, like, oh, someone was busted for, you know, they like that old-fashioned, prohibition-y kind of thing, dog whistling kind of thing. So, Michaela's kind of trying to be fair about this, and she realized that she sees things have changed, that she left California, and that this is happening. But of course, she brings up the police officers, which are irrelevant out here right now, because they may not like this proposition going through, but they don't like it enough to actually put money behind their opinions, so they're not willing to lose money, basically. And then she also brought up the drug driving concerns, or someone else, some other lady brought up how they're concerned about it being exposed to children, and that hasn't been proven yet. Yet it has. Okay, and it's so funny to look at some place like New York and someone like Michaela Pereira who comes from California and see them still exhibiting this old, like, belief system when things are so drastically changing out here in California. My plants are large, and there's a former teacher living within eyesight of them, and she just smiles at me every day, and we have lovely conversations. You really have no clue back east what's happening. Everybody is learning the truth, and that's why it's shocking to you, because you are still in that cave, man. You're still being shown a puppet show, you know, and you still believe that that's reality. It's not. And once you come out of that cave like we have, wonder what the hell you were doing there so long. You really will. You'll be like, I can't even believe that this went on for 30 to 80 years. And well, it's amazing. It's shocking. It's been going on since the 1930s. It's just fucking crazy. It's, okay. So, my next story. Oh, wait. I was like, should I stop for that? Yeah, that's right. I don't have any video. I don't read anything. Just check out Michaela's show. Okay, so my next story is Santa Barbara is temporarily banning recreational cannabis shops now. And everyone in the comments from Santa Barbara said, what a gigantic waste of time. Now here's what's funny about what the situation we're in right now. I live in a banned city, and recreational is about to become legal, and you've already banned medical cannabis dispensaries, so now you're going to ban recreational cannabis places. So what's going to happen is that patients like me are going to become superstars. Here's our big chance, boy. They are just handing it to us on a silver platter. You don't even have to sell anything. You can just give it away. You can just say, hey, come over to my house. I'm having a party this weekend. And you will be the most popular fucking person at your work site because you have access when your town is banned everything. It's gonna be like you're an angel. Seriously, I was like, oh my god. When thinking about it, these guys have opened themselves up to, they have less control over what's gonna happen than places that have allowed dispensaries now. Because they don't have the money to stop it. It's going to be everywhere, and they're not going to get a dime out of it. And they've set themselves back, 10 years, 5, 10 years. They'll be tripping and falling trying to get regulation in. And all those people that thought they were serious about this are going to realize, no, this was all just politics. And as soon as the thing really started to go against them, your prohibitionism is just going under the bus. So here, Santa Barbara is banning recreational cannabis shops. Oh, and one more thing. One of the other commenters said, you know, the problem we really have is too many liquor stores and stuff like that. And I wrote him, and I'm like, no, dude. Ventura and Santa Barbara, we love our California Drunk Festival. We're about to have one this weekend. Or we had one last weekend. I'm not sure which. But I know another California Drunk Festival is come along. And I don't have anything against that. But when you favor that so heavily, and you're banning marijuana, boy, do you look suspicious. Do you look like you want people addicted to a more dangerous drug? Boy, you expose yourselves. Okay, so here's that story. Newshawk.com. Local news. Santa Barbara temporarily bans recreational marijuana businesses ahead of legalization vote. With the legalization of marijuana, cannabis, in California appearing increasingly likely, the city of Santa Barbara on Tuesday issued a temporary ban on recreational cannabis businesses for the purpose of studying their potential local effect before they can open. The city-wide ban and interim emergency zone ordinance was enacted by a unanimous vote of the city council. I think it's prudent to put a moratorium in place so that we can figure out how we might regulate these kinds of sales and storefronts, possibly, Councilwoman Kathy Merlo said. The ordinance comes 2 months before California votes on whether to legalize marijuana via Proposition 64, the Adult Use of Cannabis Act, which is increasingly expected to pass. The emergency ordinance required the city to determine that non-medical marijuana businesses could pose an immediate threat to public health and safety and required a 4/5 vote to the council, which translates to 6 out of the 7. With Councilman Bandy White absent, city staff encouraged a unanimous vote since the law is ambiguous about whether a 4/5 threshold should be applied to an incomplete council. The safety issue, the city will study. The attorney Ariel Calone told the councils are not those that could arise from cannabis itself, but from the business and transaction side. Of particular concern are the potential impacts related to where those businesses would set up shop in the city. After all, it's not in my backyard, right? NIMBYs. Such as the effects of having such a business near a school. But don't worry, liquor stores and massage parlors are fine. Land use related impacts could be as simple, for instance, as concerns over the availability of parking when a new business moves in, city staff said. Well, parking is a major issue in Santa Barbara. That place is a nightmare to drive a car in. If self-driving cars come, Santa Barbara should adopt it right away. It could really solve a lot of the insanity that goes on there. It's crazy. That place is crazy for parking. We don't like going there because of it. Okay, what we will be looking at in the next year or two would be identifying locations and activities that would be permissible, regulated, or prohibited, and under which zoning and under which conditions. City planners Andrew Beermond told the council that community's discussion that hasn't happened yet. Though marijuana-related council meeting items typically draw a large and energetic presence from the public, no speaker slips were submitted for public comment. Though the ban is only in effect for 45 days, the council has the ability to extend it for up to 2 years on October 18th with another 4/5 vote. A few of the council members hinted at support for a full 2-year extension, which Mayor Helene Schinder said would grant maximum flexibility for studying the issue and developing an ordinance regulating recreational pot. In other words, medical patients, you will have 2 years to be as popular as the guy who shows up at the beach on the 4th of July with a huge box of illegal fireworks. You're about to be a local hero, thanks to your city council. For studying the issue, yes, take your time, drag your feet, it will only hurt you more. Schneider said that, like the process that went into developing the city's medical marijuana dispensary ordinance, drafting the city's ordinance regulating non-medical marijuana cannabis businesses would involve many public hearings and opportunities for the public to give their input. The new ban does not have an effect, however, on medical cannabis dispensaries because now officially we call them cannabis. I'm sorry, Newshawk, did you not get the memo? California has changed the words medical marijuana to medical cannabis because marijuana is a racist word and is not scientific and should not in any way be used by any reasonable or an official that expects to be respected, because it's a dog whistle for racism. Even though everyone uses it, it's time we all recognize that. So they're using the old racist language. Medical cannabis dispensaries, 3 of which are permitted in the city, provided they are separate areas. Bermond said that recent poll has shown support for legalization at around 60%, with opposition around 35%. If passed, the proposition would permit recreational businesses to open immediately in designated commercial zones, impose a statewide 15% excise tax, and allow for the cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing, possession, sale, purchase, testing, and transportation of cannabis in certain amounts for those 21 years and older. The Adult Use of Cannabis Act would also allow local governments to regulate the tax cannabis activities, but prohibits them from banning indoor cultivation for personal use. On November 8th, Santa Barbara will be voting not only on that proposition, but whether cannabis should be taxed by the city as well. In June, the council voted to put a 20% tax on the on the gross receipts of those recreational and medical cannabis on the ballot. The vote was also unanimous on declaring the action an emergency measure. The justification the city drafted for the tax included sufficient funds for its capital operations and reserve needs, extra funds being required to ensure dispensaries compliance with relevant laws, and extra funds being required to ensure the protection of public health and safety should recreational cannabis be legalized. The measure requires a simple majority of votes to pass, and revenues would go towards general city services, including those dealing with the recreational regulation of local cannabis industry. The city estimates a very rough $2.2 million in annual revenues from the 20% rate, which could be lowered in the future by the council. That total will be about half that, if either the Adult Use of Cannabis Act fails or it passes, but the city extends its recreational cannabis prohibition. Next one's good. Just want to sit here and soak it up for a minute. Yeah, I've been really dreamy the last week, just looking at my plants growing, realizing what it means at this time. It's just, it's amazing. It's amazing to be at this point in my life, to see this happening. It's really historic. So KPBS did a poll called California Counts, and apparently they do this every election cycle, and I've seen their polls before. And the thing about their poll is that they don't just poll likely voters, which is like polling landowners back at the beginning of our country, because only landowners were allowed to vote for president. Okay, so everybody tends to go to likely voters, which is going to give you, honestly, it is true, more honest idea of what the election is going to turn out like. But to poll everyone in California means that they poll young people and what their belief system is, and that means what the politics is going to be in 2020 and 2030. And naturally, KPBS was not pleased with these results and desperately tried to explain it away and say, oh no, don't worry, it isn't going to be as devastating as these polls are. Okay, so their poll says that 71% of Californians, all Californians, not just likely voters or registered voters, support this. Support regulation for cannabis. Okay, do you know what that means? That means that for the next 20 years of politics coming out of California from young people, because remember, they said this shit about me back in 1985 when I was in high school. Oh, those young voters won't come out, blah, blah, blah. And look at us today. Yeah, So you just keep saying nothing to see here and all that stuff, but I'll tell you what, it means that not only am I right at the cusp of this beginning, but it's going to get exponentially bigger with the next couple of generations are going to come out. So here is KPBS's new California Counts poll.
KPDS, California Counts poll, big lead for Kamala Harris, yes on pot, not just yes. Okay, so let's go all the way down to where it really gets interesting. This poll says that we have a 71% lead, all right, which is super exciting. However, this poll asks more than just, likely voters. It asks everyone in the state. This is actually the way California feels about marijuana legalization outright. Nader said this poll differs from typical election surveys because it does not focus on registered or likely voters. Instead, it seeks to capture the sentiment of California residents more broadly. I think that is a more devastating poll because, quite frankly, to only poll people that are likely voters or registered is like only polling people back in the olden days that own property. Or, you know what I mean? We're established. The idea is that there are some people they've decided to ignore, or they know they have difficulty getting to the poll for one reason or another. Isn't that very interesting? Is it because they don't want to go, or because there is some sort of a difficulty, like in other states? Okay? But this is a devastating blow to prohibition, to know that the majority of this state here in California, the sixth largest economy in the world, is saying, federal government, the world is not flat, and we're about to fucking tell you so. I mean, so people's asses are in big fucking trouble right now. This is when the rabbits should run. And they're not intelligent enough to run, and they're trapped. They can't go anywhere. They are trapped in their web of lies. They have to wear the suit of fucked up now. They are fucked. This is fucked for them. I mean, may God have mercy on their souls. Oh my God. Okay. She said that that could influence some of the results. Such as support for Proposition 64 on the November ballot initiative that would legalize recreational marijuana. The poll found that 71% of respondents favor legalization, 10% higher than in a recent Public Policy Institute of California poll of likely voters. It is probably the case that people who are less likely to vote are more in favor of it, Nadel said no. Where's the evidence of that? Exactly. That is an assumption, and one made on class. You know what I mean? That was pretty dirty pool right there. Well, people that don't bother to show up to the polls are probably all stoners. That's basically what this person said. Disgusting racism. Disgusting racism. So, we see, for example, almost amongst young people, they're more likely to favor it at 84% yes. In our survey, those are some of the sorts of people you might see get selected out because they're not going to show up to the polls. Okay, you're an idiot. They're telling you what the election for 2020 is going to be like. So whoever's talking all this shit is spinning a web of, oh, nothing to see here. Move along. That's basically what this moron said. No, there's a hell of a lot to see here. Okay? So you can shut up now, and you can drop dead with your racist mouth.
Now for my last story, I want to revisit this other story I did. It was back in, I think, April. And it was when our California cannabis chief was put in place, right? They called her the California pot czar. That's back when the Bureau of Medical Marijuana was called Medical Marijuana, and now it's called the Bureau of Medical Cannabis, because marijuana is a racist word. It is like saying the N-word, and even though it's time that we start recognizing and stop using it for official things, because you cannot have a Bureau of Racist Word anything in America, okay? So they had to change it to cannabis. So it is now known as the Bureau of Medical Cannabis, and she is the cannabis chief, not the pot czar. So I'm going to go back and reread this, and you listen with me at the hate language coming out of this paper and how it hurts their little buttholes, alright, to have to admit that these things are happening, and you can hear it in their language. And now that we're on the other side of this polling, 71%, I get to go, let's look back at this language. Do you see the hate here? Because I do, and I always did. They masked it from me. This is like dog whistles. They're whistling for their racist friends, you know. Oh, those young people, you know, they are unreliable. They won't come to the polls. Oh, the pot smokers can't be trusted or can't be relied on, or it's associated with crime. As a matter of fact, if you think back, when Afghanistan was going on, if you were in Afghanistan, I seem to remember there was a little documentary coming out about how soldiers were pissed off at Afghani fighters, who also turned out to join ISIS and everything, I guess, later, because they were smoking weed, because there's weed all over the country. Like, this was just another reason to look down your nose at it, because weed grew there and they used it, and that made them inferior. Do you see? So they use all this stuff to try to stain your reputation. They're doing it to us, and it's bullshit, you know. And everybody has to be treated differently, not just people you think are okay, because of whatever color or social standing they have. Just because that pot smoker doesn't bother you, but those pot smokers do, you still need to check yourself. You're not getting this, you know. You're wrong. You're on the wrong side of this thing. So let me read to you this old California, and they use pot czar, but I'm going to change it to cannabis chief. Predicts weed business will surpass booze. And I am going to use the insulting word for booze. Fair's fair. Now I'd like to go back to a classic story that I brought up back in April 21st, 2016, okay? And that is the California's new, and I'm going to say the way they say it first, pot czar predicts weed business could surpass booze. Now let's read it like a normal adult that isn't trying to make clickbait. California's new medical cannabis chief predicts that cannabis business could surpass wine and alcohol beverages. You know, like adults talk, instead of like 14-year-olds are typing headlines. For those who celebrate April 20th as Weed Day, yes, there's nothing disrespectful in that first sentence, is there? This person is not snooting their fucking nose at us at all, are they? And those who don't, here's a prediction to consider. The newly appointed chief of the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulations predicts, we don't call it that anymore, now it is called the Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulations, because the word marijuana is not scientific and is a remnant of prohibition and is a racist word, and it was meant to hurt people and to basically confuse the voters and congressmen from understanding that the plant marijuana and cannabis were the same thing. So we don't call it that anymore because that's a bad word. At least you shouldn't be using it in official terms or in the newspaper. It's irresponsible of you. Regulations predict licensed pot businesses. No, it's called cannabis, my dear. Miss Brooke Edwards, it's called cannabis. Businesses soon might rival or even outnumber sanctioned booze businesses. Now, she does use disrespectful language for also booze. You mean wine and beverage companies. I don't think we're going to have a big licensing population here in California as it relates to cannabis. Notice that the actual chief of the Bureau of Medical Cannabis uses the word cannabis, but not the reporter who has to be the clicky baity one. Lori Ajax said, there were 8,849 active alcohol licenses last year. That indicates Ajax, aka the pot czar. That is just completely disrespectful. That is just rude and disrespectful. And I'm sorry, why should anyone take somebody who talks like this seriously? Will have a big task before her and a lot of eyes on her, with California already estimated to account for half of the nation's marijuana industry. No cannabis industry, no pressure, right? Said a laughing Ajax. Both her position and her bureau were created in October when Governor Jerry Brown signed the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act into law. The new regulations are an attempt to rein in an industry that's operated largely in the shadows in the 20 years since California voted to legalize cannabis, medical cannabis. You notice we've been out of control because the voters voted in 215 or whatever, right? That first legalized medical marijuana back in like 86 or whatever. And these guys are like, oh no, that's or 96, and or I can't remember what it was right off bat, but it's like, oh no, that was out of control. See, she's still selling that this whole angle that this was never medical. That's almost like totally propaganda coming from the police unions. That is literally propaganda coming from the police unions. This was never medical. That's what that entire thing implies. It's so interesting now when you read back at some of these stories how bigoted they really do appear. And it's only going to get worse as time goes on. We'll be reading back over some of this filth and going, wow, did the New York Times, the LA Times really write that? Wow. Wow. How ignorant they were. Wow. The new regulations are an attempt to rein in. Yes, we're reining in. Wrong. No. All legislation is a living thing and gets amended. No one's reining anything in, child. We are simply making it better. Okay. California voted to legalize medical cannabis. See, again, she's using this word. That's led to a mismatch of pot laws. Cannabis, my dear. Learn the word. It's scientific. Hemp, cannabis. You'll be okay. That big college education of yours, I thought that would have helped you to understand the importance of labeling things properly. Pot laws. How offensive. Aimed at supporting legal use for patients while still attempting to stamp out recreational use and abuse. I think there is a lot of ambiguity here right now, Ajax said. My vision is that we put together a strong regulatory structure where cannabis patients can get access to safe medicine and that Californians can be proud of. As if that's not a daunting enough task, Ajax mandate and the number of pot licenses, cannabis licenses, sweetheart, you really have to change this offensive language of yours. You know, pretty soon it ain't going to be advertiser friendly. Might expand dramatically if Californians approve the recreational use of cannabis. Good, you do know that word. At the ballot box in November. Either way, her bureau won't be doing it alone. The Department of Food and Agriculture will monitor cultivation and the development of public health, will supervise manufacturing and testing of cannabis products. Good job. Ajax Bureau, which is under the Department of Consumer Affairs, will regulate transportation, distribution, and sale. But with 17 different licenses to establish some leaders in California's nearly 3 billion medical cannabis industry have quietly voiced concerns that clear rules might not be in place in time to start issuing permits by the targeted deadline of January 1st, 2018. Ajax has no such doubts. There is no room for failure here. It's going to happen. From ABC to 420, Ajax started at Sacramento State as a history major, and it only took one criminal justice class to change her path, which led to a 21-year career with the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control. We're not calling it booze anymore, huh? You can make a difference in a community by regulating alcohol and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and keeping alcohol out of the hands of kids, she said. I really liked that mission. The Sacramento area Republican rose through the ranks at the ABC service since January 2014 as the agency's chief deputy director. Brown's appointed Ajax chief of the Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulation on February 3rd, beating out staff competition to take over the potentially powerful new state agency. She was sworn in 3 weeks later. Ajax, who doesn't use cannabis, previously had little knowledge of California's medical cannabis scene, but she found the idea of building a regulatory agency from the ground up fascinating. I think that it was maybe a good thing that I came into this not knowing a lot about the cannabis industry, she said. I didn't come in with any preconceived notions. To get to know the community, she's launching a series of meetings across the state, with one in the works for Orange County sometime in May. So that would have passed. Miss Ajax appears to seriously engage in working with stakeholders and the industry to make MMRSA, now MCRSA, a success, said Aaron Harrisburg, who runs CalCan Holdings, a Costa Mesa company that invests in everything from real estate to cannabis cultivation to dispensaries. Harrisburg heard Ajax during her first public address at the California Cannabis Industry Association conference last month in Sacramento. He said he was encouraged by her effort to understand industry needs and her commitment to hit that January 1st, 2018 deadline. If she manages to pull off that ambitious goal, it would be an amazing accomplishment, he said, building the Bureau. For the first month on the job, Ajax was the Bureau's only employee. Brown recently appointed Angie Tsu, a State Assembly Committee policy consultant who helped draft the cannabis bill, to be the Bureau's senior policy advisor, and the state is advertising now for an assistant chief. The proposed budget for the coming fiscal year calls for 126 new government jobs tied to the new cannabis regulations, including 25 who will work in Ajax's bureau. The next challenge, she said, will be to fill out details of the new law, incorporating public input and getting a final draft of all regulations approved. A key part of that effort involves sorting out the rules for enforcement of cannabis laws generally. Ajax expected the Bureau to work much like other industries regulated by the Department of Consumer Affairs, with complaints triggering investigations. The state also will train local law enforcement to understand the new regulations, and Ajax said the agency will work closely with police once the rules are firmly established. Building the Bureau is in some way a moving target, with cleanup legislation and related bills pending that could shift direction a bit, and more change could be in the works if voters redraw the cannabis rules yet again. The Adult Use of Cannabis Act, Marijuana Act, which is expected to qualify for the November ballot, already has, calls for Ajax's agency to oversee the recreational use of cannabis in addition to the drug's medical uses. Ajax insists she hasn't yet pondered how her job will change if recreational use becomes legal. For the time being, Ajax remains focused on the challenge of it already in place. I want to be involved in just putting in a really strong, fair, consistent regulatory system that everyone can look at and say, look what California did. Okay, so I was up late last night. I went to bed, and I'm laying there in bed, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do about this adventure? And I started to realize, oh shit. I got to start thinking about three-dimensional combat. In other words, when you're walking on land, it's two-dimensional. You're going to fight this way or this way. Jump up and down, maybe. Climb something, okay? But it's pretty two-dimensional. If you're underwater, fighting a dude, now you're going to have to be clever on how. So, here's what I'm thinking. Three-dimensional chessboard. I'm going to see if I can find me some plexiglass. And I need like three pieces of something clear that I can stab and put a grid map on, right? So that you can place the characters within the grid map, and you can show that, because it's a three-dimensional space now, top, bottom, and middle. So maybe they come in, there's a cave, there's a pool, now they gotta dive into the pool. Now, it's like, first level of the chess set is this, them swimming. Second level is them diving to the midpoint. Third level is where they get grabbed by the octopus and pulled in its cave and munched on. Well, I got up so fast. I started going three-dimensional combat online. How's this work? I was just like, things started coming to mind. I was like, oh, I gotta draw a side view of this. The characters are in trouble, in my opinion. Yeah, okay. My brother was saying I should enlarge the rooms. He wasn't specific about how. He assumed width. Maybe I'll enlarge them in a different way. Depth. Okay, so that's the kind of an update on what I'm thinking about for my adventure. You're fighting sea creatures. Eventually, this cave's probably going to end up in a deep water situation. I'm going to have to figure out three-dimensional combat, and for that, I need to kind of create a 3D chess set, like from Star Trek, different levels, so 3 levels, so that your character standing there can swim up to the second level, down to the bottom level, or move around side to side, or crossways, or you're going to have to think. So in order to help the adventurers see the situation, I was like, I can do this if I can get my hands on some sort of plexiglass, or picture glass or something. So I'll start thinking about that. That's what my next mission is going to be. And start writing the next part of the cavern. So I'm going to change it up a bit. I'm going to make some of the rooms bigger. I'm going to, why didn't the other guards come? So now I got to, why the other guards didn't come? Yeah. And characters have been asked themselves, why weren't there more reinforcements? I gotta think about what haven't they asked themselves, not to play it against them, but because now I need to be asking myself, what are you going to do there? What's this going to be? What's that going to be? brother did this too. We try to make an adventure and set it in stone and leave breadcrumbs. Adventures are not like that. It's like herding kittens. No, they don't want to go the way that you have set forth for them. What you have to do is have a general idea of the layout, and what the people are like and everything, and who's there and what they're doing. They're already in action. You have control of that. He's over here and he's making a deal with this bad guy, and then he steals this and he kills this woman and he escapes. While this is happening, your characters are coming into the scene. Their reactions will change that, and you have to be pliable as a storyteller and go, okay, what the fuck am I gonna do? Beat the fucking monster that I put in front of them. I gotta figure something out. It gets to be really fun. Anyway, so that's like my what I'm thinking is a DM situation. Things, and I want this particular catacombs to be unpleasant and really super damp, and like a place that needs to be excavated and cleaned out. A lot of sand has filled it in and stuff, and collapsed caves and water. And now there's been a storm. That's another thing I thought about. There was a storm, right? Wiped away the opening to the catacombs. What else did it do? What did it blow in from the ocean? You know, what sort of monsters usually aren't found in the harbors of Waterdeep that are there. So, it's like when we have storms here, not only do things happen at the beach, but like the creeks will fill up and logs and shit will float down to the ocean, and then along the beach there'll be all this debris and wood and shit. People go, oh, let's climb on that, and then there's fucking snakes hiding on it. So, this is the kind of thinking I need to do. This is the kind of thing I need to think about. So maybe it's washed into these caves, inhabited them recently that the Sahagin are not aware of because of the recent storms, even though this is the end of spring, beginning of summer, so this was several months ago, these storms happened. Gives things time to grow. Alright, so that's my show. I am so right now divided in my thoughts. It's interesting what's going on with me. It's like I'm playing guitar. I have to still concentrate. Practice, fucking playing guitar. I'm getting better. I'm not letting go of that. But on the other hand, now I have a huge epic adventure I'm running. And I might need someone else to take over some DMing, some different parts, to give there's so much here. You can have side quests and have someone else running. And it's all part of this whole entire thing. As long as you don't kill anybody off or screw up the main quest. Okay, so there's a possibility for that. And it's really inhabiting my brain right now, and I'm loving it. I mean, I literally jumped up at like 12:30. I just got to bed like at 12. I was laying there talking to my husband about the adventure, and he goes, "You're telling me too much." I'm like going nuts thinking about this. I gotta come up with something, and then I was like, and I thought, what if the pools were much deeper? To swim and fight, like really with the Sahagin in their element, spellcasting, everything changes. So I was like, I jumped up immediately. I was so like, oh. You can't fire an arrow into the fucking water or throw a dagger or something like that. Your attacks become very different. I have to provide for them some items that are different, like harpoon guns, that kind of shit. Some fucking underwater breathing shit. That's the first thing. How am I going to write it into the story so they're going to stumble? And I got a plan, trust me. They need a few things, and it's going to show up in this place. And then I got to write it in the story with the reason why, so it makes sense with the story. I had a basic outline. Okay? So it's like that's got me occupied, and then of course coming to the end of this legalization thing in California, now Kelly has been, Kelly planned to do this back in 2010, not the web show or any of this kind of shit or YouTube, but I had a general outline. And as the adventure unfolded and all the characters acted in their parts, I began to see that I needed to move in certain directions to position myself. share real quick? Okay. Anyway, now I've gotten to the end of all my planning. I went through a year or so of this adventure of doing YouTube, and I'm not going to quit now because this war is not over, right? The struggle. But it's nice when the cannon fire is slowing at the place where you live and puts you in a totally different mindset. I'm not angry, I'm not frustrated, I don't feel put on or misunderstood or labeled. I'm not feeling like I'm being strangled. My voice in the world is being strangled, my efforts, because of some judgment coming from somewhere on high. I don't experience, I'm not experience less and less of this, even though I live in one of the cities in California that bans. It's so half-hearted. They're banning it, but it's everywhere. Delivery, you can get it anywhere. I mean, it's half-hearted. I have to honestly say it's half-hearted. Nobody's running around. They put up some signs. The most they did was they put up a bunch of signs saying, "Weed DUI is real," back about a year ago. And every time Cinco de Mayo or something shows up, or 420 or something, it's "Weed DUI is real." Really? Because you don't know weed smokers. We'd rather have somebody else drive. Or we'd rather walk or something, or play Dungeons and Dragons. You really don't get us. We're not alcoholics. We don't have a need to get in a big group of people with loud noises and watch people fight and shit. There's no need for none that's bad. Everybody to their own. I've drank plenty of shit in my time. Trust me. That's over. I'm fucking 50. I'm not doing that forever. That killed a friend of mine doing that shit forever. I got an alternative, and I ain't doing oxycodone. Anyway, so it's like this trippy feeling. It's a new experience for me. I have to find my footing in it, and how much effort to apply to the situation that is appropriate for what I'm going through. Because think about it, when you're coming from a legal state, you can scream and yell. Russ Belvin does a wonderful job, and his state's legal. But at some point, what you really need is voices coming from the state that is oppressed, and you need those people to stand up and have a web show and start talking. And that's why I follow so many people who need to find out where everybody's from, watch their attitudes. Are they depressed? So I'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully we'll hear more news. And I'm sticking with this thing. Don't worry, I'm not giving up. But it is, you gotta understand, amazing, amazing to hear that 71% of the people around you are fine with you smoking weed and aren't gonna call the cops and aren't gonna walk by and go, oh my god, and all this shit, or call you a stoner, or think bad things about you, or whatever. It's just so. If you look at the beginning of my show, when I first admitted that I was a marijuana smoker on YouTube and got my medical marijuana card, and today, oh, come the fuck on. That's a story. Come the fuck on. You're telling me history ain't gonna be interested in that? Wrong. Ding dong. You're wrong. T-Town Tim, making clouds with mud flap. Freddie Pritchard, Jane Drow, fucking Soundtrack. All these guys, man, out there. All you guys. You think history ain't gonna care about you? I was watching some shit about skateboard museum, and this guy was getting, skateboards and memorabilia from sort of really way back in the day, like 73 skateboarders and stuff, when people were doing the swimming pools and shit, and obscure guy, and he's like, I'll make sure that skateboarding history doesn't forget you. That's the way stuff history needs to be. I'll make sure that stuff history doesn't forget you. You see how